All right, I am back with another Destiny 2 video. Yeah, still in the situation here. I wanted to talk about kind of where Destiny goes from here. I just wrote a whole thing about Marathon and how important Marathon is to the future and its potential audience, its potential earnings and revenue, and how that's going to factor into Bungie in the future. Because the main point is Destiny 2 has to fully support Bungie until they can get Marathon out, which is now not until 2025. And we've talked about before how they're not just going to stop Destiny. They can't. It's impossible. But it does feel like the events of this week are going to significantly change things. So I had a map in my head of probably what I thought was going to happen before all this. And the delays are part of it, but the cuts are another part of it. So the original thought I had here, it seemed like a pretty straightforward calendar where we'd have season 23, we would have the final shape released on time, and in the usual slots of February, and then we would begin these episodes, and these episodes seemed like they were going to be kind of just a transitionary period between the Light and Darkness saga and then the new saga of Destiny that they've already talked about. I always do the hand directions wrong because it's reversed. The new saga of Destiny 2 that they've talked about. They have made it very clear that they were going to be doing, kind of a new arc in Destiny 2 going forward. So I figured that we'd have these extended episodes which are disconnected from each other. I think Bungie wanted to do that they said to make it beefier, and then also you can play them in any order. They're not connected like the seasons have been. We don't know if they're doing this like forever, but at least for this year, that was the plan. And then what I figured would happen is we kind of go back to a normal cadence where, whether it's episodes or season, probably episodes, we would start the new era with a expansion a year after the final shape, and we just keep going in the same cadence with yearly expansions and stuff in between them. It's a live game that does seem to be, what you would imagine they're going to do. And then I thought that this would all eventually lead to a couple more years from now, maybe at the start of the next console generation, that would be like the grand reboot time, like a full sequel, either Destiny 3 or just total rebranding of Destiny to just be like, Destiny Infinite or whatever it is. And that would start kind of the third age of Destiny after an essentially 10-year run of Destiny 2. So that is what I thought the map would be from here. Now, I think we may have to recalculate both in the short term, certainly, and then possibly in the long term as well. So I think we sort of have to acknowledge that these delays are almost certainly happening. Bungie has not announced them yet, but reporting from IGN and Bloomberg and some people who cannot confirm or deny things that I've talked to, it very much feels like this is happening. It will be delayed from February to June, so it's a 4-month delay. So what that does is that creates one of our lengthy final seasons, and this has happened, I think, twice before, where we've had 6-month seasons. The one, I think it was before Beyond Light. I forget what it was, but there was one that had essentially nothing in the middle, and that's when playtime just kind of drops off a cliff because you're 3 months past the normal season and there wasn't all that much to do. They had like some little things and holiday events and stuff, but then the last time this happened before Witch Queen, they had the 30th anniversary pack all planned, and that wasn't a full season. That was still a significant addition to the game. It was like, yeah, the paid dungeon, but it had Dares of Eternity, it had new loot, it had, some significant things added here. However, this time it's a little unclear if there has been time enough to prepare something for mid-season. I've heard they're working on something for it. I don't think there's just going to be nothing, but I think we have to keep in mind that, they're doing last-minute stuff for season 23 because it's a month away, and you already have to start working on the episodes by now, and you have the majority of focus is the final shape because there's all these reports that it's not quite where they want it to be, and it's already been delayed a year with Lightfall pushing it back, and now it's delayed another 4 months. So I think it's kind of all hands on deck, mostly for Lightfall. So I don't know how much room there is for people to be working on something significant for midway through a 6-7 month season 23. unless they knew about this delay a long time ago. That's not really something you can improvise in a serious manner. I wonder if they could bring any part of the episodes over, but that, I don't know. That seems like that would not be able to happen. And then there's the idea that if they did produce something, and would it be a paid thing like 30th anniversary was for the dungeon? I don't know if anyone would be in the mood to spend on something like that at this point. But if it's not paid, if it is free, then Bungie is losing even more revenue because they want people to buy a new season every 3 months. And if there is no new season to buy, that is a revenue loss. So I would imagine they might charge for anything they did produce in the middle of this, even if it's not, what was 30th anniversary, like $30, I think, 20, 25. I don't imagine it would cost more than a season, $10, $12. Maybe they do a new battle pass or something and some small things, but that's really unclear. So then we get to the final shape, which is pushed back to June. We've never had a June summer expansion before in Destiny, I don't believe. They used to be always in the fall, and then they started getting pushed back to the winter. But then if you push back from the winter, we end up in the summer. So that's where that's going to land. But this would shift the entire cadence of the episodes back, the episodes which are meant to last an entire year. And if there is a new expansion, then that would either be in the summer if it was on time, or if that got pushed back too, then maybe we're back to the fall again, and that we've gone all the way around in a full loop where they can't always hit the yearly target. It's like 14, 15, 16 months. So that would alter the cadence of things. But I think it is a real question now as to whether Destiny is going to keep doing the same types of expansions they've been doing. I before this, I would have said it's almost a guarantee that they would just keep on the same path. And even if I didn't think it was the greatest idea to do just even more stuff with Destiny 2 within the same game, essentially, that seemed like it would be the plan. Now, I don't know, because these expansions are huge. They take a ton of time and talent and hours and money to put into them. And they have everyone going really hard on Final Shape right now, but then Marathon, there's a huge chunk of the company working on Marathon. And the company just lost 8% of its employees. And well, a lot of those are in not like building the game physically roles. A lot of it is in publishing and all these other roles that support a studio, which are still extremely important, obviously. Where things go from here is kind of unclear. And people that are, obviously very important to something like expansion, Michael Salvatore, the composers, we know they've done the Final Shape stuff already. Like that is, I think, on their end done. But, going forward, if there was an expansion, not going to be scored by Michael Salvatore. So how is that going to work? I don't know if they're going to be able to stick with the same model here, because it sure feels like we are about to head into a period that is going to be even worse than what we've seen. I talked yesterday about the 45% revenue miss, which I believe is a combination of internal and external factors. The internal was all, Lightfall's bad. It resulted in significantly decreased player engagement, decreased player spending. And then also, I think the estimates from Bungie management were too high that they presented to Sony in the first place. But, what happens from here? And we heard that Final Shape pre-orders are low. All the events of this week, I do not think are going to dramatically increase that. I know people have canceled their pre-orders. People can do what they want. I don't know how I feel about that, or like what that really does to change the situation one way or the other. But I personally am going to play it. But then we have this yawning season 23 that is likely to be 6 or 7 months if this delay does in fact manifest. And you have to imagine that it would obviously result in a drop in player engagement and player spending right ahead of the expansion. I think the Witch Queen survived that because the Witch Queen expansion just looked like so amazing, and it was such a culmination of the previous very good year of storytelling that everyone was still hyped for it by the time it rolled around, and it delivered. It was an extremely good expansion. This time, everyone still feels burned by Lightfall. I don't know. From the preview of the Final Shape, I don't really know how it's being received. It is the end of the Light and Darkness saga, but I personally am more interested in stuff like the Savathûn storylines that I am like Witness versus Traveler. I think in this, I think it was Season of the Deep that had that crazy cutscene essentially explaining the entire conflict between the Witness and the Traveler. That seems like something that would have been revealed in the final shape itself. It was such a strange place to like answer some of the biggest questions in Destiny history. I think what they've shown from the final shape is interesting. I know people are accusing it of reusing past areas and content because we're going through our journey of, the history inside the Traveler. I am not the biggest fan of bringing Cade back. That feels a little bit desperate to me. It reminds me of the story that just broke that Marvel's in such a bad place now they're thinking about bringing Tony Stark back to life and like trying to get the original Avengers back, and like that doesn't sound like a good idea. And I'm a little mixed on the Cade stuff here. Obviously, there's a lot more we don't know about the final shape. I've heard that there is some crazy stuff planned for the final shape that, despite all this, everyone is still very excited about. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. But I think we really do have an open question now of what is happening past the final shape and past these episodes. Before, I thought they were just not talking about it because I think they want all attention on the final shape. And they don't want to dilute it with like, oh yeah, we have this expansion called Light Rising or whatever, Light Reborn, and I'm just making up names, the following year. I think they just really want to focus on the final shape, really just only have everyone staring straight at that. But I think they did want to say, or to prove that there was something happening past that. Like they're not just, the game is not just over then, they're doing episodes. If I had to guess, I still think they are going to do expansions. I think that is an important part of player revenue and engagement. And again, Marathon is not until 2025. And even then, I don't think you can just be like, okay, we need Destiny 2 to live until Marathon and then we stop. Like, I think they need Destiny to last essentially indefinitely. It is extremely hard to build up a player base from scratch, especially in the multiplayer space, which is very competitive. Obviously, Marathon has a few advantages, given that it's Bungie gunplay. And Bungie gunplay is, unparalleled, I would say, in a lot of ways. So there's certainly a lot working in its favor, but it's definitely not a guarantee. Whereas Destiny, even if revenue misses are happening and whatever, it is still a money printer. It is still Bungie's primary money printer. But so while I believe the plan is probably to try to continue with something like the cadence that we've seen, there are a few things that are worrisome where it feels like the best way to really try to re-engage the player base probably at this point is a full reset, a full sequel, Destiny 3, a place that we can start onboarding new players again that isn't just an utter mess, and that, we can lose our vault of stuff, but like it's a clean slate. It would hopefully come with some significant engine upgrades and tech upgrades because, this is a 7-year-old game at this point. It's starting to be dated in at least, some ways. This isn't like a new engine. They're going to redo it in Unreal 5, but like, there are significant engine upgrades you can make within the same engine. I think Marathon is on a upgraded version of Bungie's, current engine. So that's one thing, but I do think it's something I never really even occurred to me before is like Bungie as a whole could be in serious trouble, like just not Destiny, like the whole company, and selling to Sony. They got all this money. I have no idea where that 1.2 billion in employee retention went. That seems like this should have easily avoided layoffs, in addition to the 200 million campus they built, which if they built a $100 million building, maybe they could have saved all of these jobs. There's a lot of, woulda, coulda, shouldas. But it is concerning what may happen with Bungie, even if it's like this independent arm or whatever. If Destiny revenue does not recover, if it keeps going down, which at least short term, that certainly feels like it's going to happen, and player retention drops, and if Marathon is not a big breakout hit, then what happens? Like you are in a spiral at that point where there might not be an answer, and Sony may chop you up into little pieces and have you support their studios that are still producing these single player games, even if they pivot away from games of service to somewhat. Like I can see that potentially happening, which is crazy. Like, it's Bungie's one of the most storied developers in the industry, from creating Halo to the 10-year success story of Destiny. I mean, it is, say what you want about the current state and all these issues, like it is a live service game that has outlasted tons of competitors. No one has been able to match it. Still puts up very solid player numbers, even with these revenue misses and declines this past year. To think that it could just not exist or just shrink to the point of irrelevance, like it's crazy. And like that's a bit doom and gloom, and I don't think we're there yet. But if we are looking at the long term, if they cannot find a way to re-engage Destiny players, like after 7 years, it's hard to even, blame them for seeing things decline. It's just it's old at that point. And like we see, MMOs and stuff, can slide over that period of time. Like it's not really unexpected. It was just very much accelerated by Lightfall. And Lightfall was such a bad moment because it actually, like on Steam at least, the numbers we can see, it was the highest concurrent player count for the game since launch. So that like after the Witch Queen, after the year that followed, that was a good solid year of seasons and stuff. Everyone got to Lightfall, and then it was just bad, and then everything just dropped off a cliff and has not been able to recover. And it has felt like Bungie's only way to press revenue and to try to get revenue up has just been countless, monetization over monetization, whether that's not making past content free that should be free at this point, or raising prices, or adding so many new different types of bundles and packages and Eververse shop items you can buy that I think it's almost backfired. I've spoken previously about how I've just essentially given up spending on anything that's not like a season or a dungeon. And I just don't think more microtransactions can be the answer at this point. You fundamentally have to laser focus on getting players back, like not doing everything players want maybe, but like really focusing on that aspect. I am very concerned about what happens with this big Joe Blackburn promise about, a dedicated PvP team and dedicated PvP maps. Now the company's smaller. They've cut a bunch of roles that they were going to hire, and now, how with 8% less employees, like how are we going to still get significant PvE content and then also have this dedicated PvP team and all these maps and stuff? Like, I'm really wondering how Joe is kind of caught in the middle of this, whether he's on like, evil management side or, getting kind of shafted the way everyone else is. My guess is that I don't think he was probably on the, picking and choosing who's getting laid off side. Like I don't know. I can't say for sure, but that's not really the impression I've gotten from him from, his really earnest live stream, like some of his, recent streams where he's seemed to be in pretty good spirits most of the time. Like it doesn't really add up to him faking that to lead up to, all these layoffs and stuff. But I can't know for sure. It's just the impression I get. So yeah, I am more concerned about Destiny than I am pretty much at any point in history, because like the vibe I'm getting from Bungie, the people that left, the people that are still there, is they're concerned too. Like this was such an abrupt, sudden thing that people really did not see coming. And this was even after, like they knew about the revenue miss and they all rallied and they were gonna like work really hard and fix it. And then just a short while later, they're smacked by all these layoffs, and like no one has any idea. No one had any idea that was coming. Everyone left is feeling really unsettled. They're missing their friends. They're worried about their own jobs and further cuts. And it's easy to look ahead and see continued revenue drop, continued player engagement drop, and this huge reliance on the final shape being enormous and a huge hit, and everyone coming back for it, when that really does not seem like a guarantee right now. Again, it's probably going to be 6-7 months away now, so maybe things will change by then. Maybe Bungie will figure out a narrative to turn things around. But the fact that there is a delay on top of all of this in the current mood feels like it's just going to make things even worse. But I guess we'll see. So the idea I had in my mind of how things were probably going to go is really kind of out the window now, and everything seems much more up in the air, both in terms of Destiny and what's planned for Marathon and other stuff there. A year ago, it's impossible for me to think that this was where we were heading, even after Lightfall. Like Lightfall was a miss, but it's like, okay, Lightfall's a miss, but the seasons that came after slowly got better, and Season of the Witch I still think is one of the best seasons in Destiny history. I think they really delivered there, but at a certain point, there needs to be some magic switch that's flipped that can reinstate player morale, and I guess employee morale now, and player engagement, and they haven't found it. And I think they were trying to find it. There's all these reports that employees were like begging for all these changes to like get players back, and most were rejected, or they took too long to be implemented by management, and that kind of led us to where we are too. And then of course this year had all the external factors of 10 million great games to play that are not Destiny 2, so that did not help things. So yeah, I'm very unsettled by all this, and I don't know where things are going. In the next year, certainly we're going to have Destiny content. I just don't know what happens after that, if we keep doing expansions, if we're just doing a string of episodes that slowly decrease in volume over time as more and more stuff moves to Marathon. I don't know. It's too early to tell. But we have no idea when Bungie is going to start talking publicly about this. Everyone is debating today whether there's going to be a TWAB at all. If there is, maybe I'll do a separate video on it. But it is easy for me to see that there's potentially not going to be one. I would not blame them for that. And if there is one, Lord knows it is probably not going to be some lengthy explanation about layoffs and delays and Destiny troubles. It's probably going to be like, here's Festival of the Lost last week, get your candy, and here's Art of the Week. Like, I would not expect anything but like a cursory mention of like, it's been a tough time. Here's, Destiny info. I guess we'll see in a few hours. But yeah, again, most of the community team that usually writes the TWAB is gone. There's only a handful of community managers left, and Cosmo is still there. Cosmo, who tweeted that this was the worst day of his career in Bungie, seeing everyone let go. So don't think anyone is in a real mood to be terribly communicative, and because of both the mood and they probably don't know a lot of information, and a lot of things is up in the air right now. So anyway, I guess, we're going to keep following it and see what happens. At some point, it feels like they're going to have to say something, even if it's just announcing the delay. Not surprised they didn't announce the delay at the exact same time as the layoffs, but, there's so many sources that all these journalists and me and whoever have at the company who want to talk that information is going to come out, and that's only going to increase from here. So anyway, thanks for watching. Things continue, and I hope for everyone's sake they can get better. No one likes to be in this position, and other than a few jerks laughing about justice and like go woke, go broke, like stupid crap like that. Like, I think everyone is very sad about this on the player side, on the employee side. Like, it's an extremely tough time. So we'll keep seeing what happens from here, and what we learn from Bungie, if anything, pretty soon. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.